everyone, and welcome to our round one preview of the St Kilda versus Adelaide match. The first match for 2025 and the first in our series of preview shows for 2025 as well. So I hope you get something out of them. Of course, we've had the wood over the Saints the last couple of years, beating them by 32 points at Adelaide Oval last year and 52 points at Marvel the year before. So all things going well, we should be able to replicate that performance on Sunday afternoon. We didn't do too bad a job on the wrap last weekend when we tried to predict the starting 22. Luke Nankervis unfortunately didn't make the squad, which was a bit of a surprise to me. Wayne Miller comes in straight back after a long layoff, but a pretty good pre-season off the half-back line, playing his 100th game. And of course we have the debutants Cumming, Peatling and Neale-Bullen, along with our first round superstar Sid Draper. Up forward, we certainly do them for height. We have Thilthorpe, Walker and Fogarty up there, of course, towering over their defenders. Neale-Bullen and then Rankin starting forward. He may start in the middle, and Benny Keys, of course, on the other flank. In the midfield, they've named Marshall to ruck. I wouldn't mind betting that he starts up forward and they have Boyd rucking. We have Scholl and Cumming on the wings, and starting in the middle with O'Brien rucking, we have Geordie Dawson, Jake Saligo and Peatling, of course. And we certainly have more depth in the midfield rotations. We have Draper, Curtin and Crouch, whereas they have Clark and Jones. So I think we might just do them for rotations and probably a little bit of class in the midfield. Down back, we have the Talls, Keane, Murray and Worrell, of course, along with Max Michaelani, Wayne Miller, as I mentioned, and also Rory Laird getting a start. They have a very undersized forward line, even if Marshall does play forward. And I wouldn't mind betting that at some stage we might see Hinge rotate there in place of one of the Talls, particularly if they start to get us a bit at the ground level. Scouting report is a little bit thin, of course, because we only have our community series footage to go by. But I've had a bit of a look, and it's the typical Ross line playbook, really. The Saints like to push players up, particularly guarding the corridor. So they'll have 3 or 4 players guarding the corridor right up to the ball carrier. But then they'll push the rest of their numbers back a fair way. And what that does is create a bit of a gap in behind that front line. And we saw Port a couple of times exploit that by either running through that first line of defence or chipping over the top into the space and therefore drawing the next line forward. And that's really the way you've got to play a line side. What he wants to do is try to create turnovers by forcing you to kick long down the line to their numbers. And that's the trap we can't fall into. We can't fall into kicking down the line or kicking long to contest because they will outnumber us. So we have to be focused on running through their defences. You can see in this particular piece of footage here, they've got quite a few numbers back. So when Port turn the ball over, you can see that St Kilda have, I think it's about 11 players back here. And Port just decide rightly that they are going to clear the space and run the ball quickly to not allow the Saints to actually form their zone. So you can see that they can run straight through their secondary defenders. Same in this footage here again, exactly the same thing. They run the ball at the Saints and run through that zone, get out over the back, and then it's easy kick into an open forward line because the Saints tend to push up and try to compress the ground. So that's definitely what we've got to do, and we've got the players in Hinge and Miller to do that. And you can see by this diagram here what I'm just talking about. We need to draw them forward, open up the space in behind, and allow our wings and forwards to run into that space and pull the Saints defenders forward. If we kick long, we're going to be playing straight into their hands and turning the ball over. Of course, when the Saints do turn the ball over, they are a kicking side. We saw in the stats earlier that they far outnumber us in marks, and that's because they like to kick. They'll generally kick out of defence or out of trouble, and then push up to try and outnumber around the contest. What that does mean, though, because they are drilled to kick, once they do have possession of the ball, they tend to run forward of it. So they can often leave the ball carrier a little bit stranded and outnumbered, and you can see in the footage there that the pressure that was caused by having 4 Port players around that Saints player made that ball turn over. And you can see again in this footage here, Brad Hill at no stage wants to do anything other than kick long. He kicks to a contest, and at this point it's a fairly even numbered sort of a contest. But by the time the ball gets to the deck, you'll notice that the Saints have all pushed up. So all of a sudden they've got, 8 players, and Port are able to turn the ball over, turn St Kilda around, and just run through them. And that's exactly what we've got to do. We've got to make sure that we hold our shape, don't come too ahead of the ball, and force turnovers that way. So what's our advantages? I think obviously it's our strength up forward. We have aerial supremacy up forward, as long as we don't let the ball bounce out too much. We have a fantastic rebounding half-back line with Miller and Hinge there, with Geordie going back as well, and a lot more midfield depth. I think we'll do them for depth and just a bit more class. There are dangers though. We can't let the ball bounce out of our forward 50. We certainly can't be slow in transition, or else we'll allow them to force turnovers and turn it into a bit of an arm wrestle. And we could be a little bit oversized in defence. As I mentioned before, we might have to mix and match around the back 6. What's the verdict? Look, I think we're going to win comfortably. 55 points I've put there, 10 goals. I think it'll be a great start and a great milestone for Wayne Miller's 100th game as well. Look, thanks very much for joining us. Don't forget to join us on the Weekend Wrap on Sunday night at 8:30. There's live chat, live streaming on YouTube. Thanks for all your company. We'll see you then.